Thank you for joining us today as well, and thank you for yesterday for such an amazing array of speakers. Before diving into the sessions today, we'll do a brief highlights of yesterday so that it gives us a baseline to start the presentations and the talks today. Yesterday, we've had amazing presentations and amazing speakers. We've had with us Tarja McKinnon from the European Commission, Phoenicia Bethout, advisor to the EU Counterterrorism Coordinator, and we've had an amazing presence from colleagues from the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. We've had an amazing number of parallel sessions on evidence-based evaluation, on City Spotlight, showcasing and assessing local PCV initiatives and how we can empower actors at local level for effective PCV policymaking and work. A session on evaluation of PCV strategies and policies, a case study of an evaluation, the evaluation of the Mayor of London's Shared Endeavour Fund, and our colleagues from the UN office have presented us a compendium of good practices in measuring results in counterterrorism and preventing and countering violent extremism. We've also had a community of practice in which speakers, together with attendees and with moderators in the forum, have had the opportunity to exchange on innovations, ideas, and takings from the first day of the forum. And we've ended the day with an evening talk with the amazing Michael Quinn Patton. We will not be going into details of the various sessions that occurred, maybe just share a few of the highlights and the lessons learned. One of them was the importance, role, and value of evaluation. Many of the speakers have emphasized that in a world that is more and more polarized, in which boundaries are blurred between ideologies, in which we have new emerging forms of extremism, in which violent thoughts are increasing, incitement to hatred and hate speech as well, and borderline content, awful but lawful, is increasing. Evaluation becomes more and more important for PCV efforts. Everyone has emphasized that it should be a common effort, a work of solidarity between practitioners, policymakers, academics, and researchers. One of the things that has been emphasized throughout the sessions, and is one of the key learnings, is the whole of society approach, and we need to look at evaluations that look long-term. The importance to evaluate has been emphasized as well, to develop further the work done so far. As violent extremism evolves, evaluations are needed to make sure that prevention efforts are fit for purpose and for context. Another advice and recommendation from key experts in the field has been to do more evaluations. We need to develop an evaluation culture. We need to increase the number of evaluations, lessons to be learned, and impact assessments. Tangible evidence and indicators are needed to see what works and what does not in order to adjust policies and ensure we have the trust of citizens for PCVE efforts. The education component to counter terror is key. We thank Lynn Davis for making this important point. And we need to develop evaluation capacity, approaches, processes, and tools, and to socialize evaluation results among relevant stakeholders. There is also a need to open the space for dialogue, for synergies, and for evaluation synthesis. Another important guideline and advice has been to spend time on what does not work and go back to communities and target groups. Multi-sectoral and multi-agencies approaches work best. This is one of the key learnings from sessions yesterday. Some challenges have been also underlined. One of them is basically the still growing need to understand the role of evaluation, the challenges to evaluation of PCVE initiatives given the increasing form of violence and manifestations of extremism, and the perception that evaluation must be fully positive to please donors. Deep thinking and deep learning is something that we take from the evening talk with Michael Patton. There is a need to develop interpretive capacity, and that good data does not guarantee good decisions. He has talked about the banality of evaluation, looking at evaluation as a pro forma, as evaluations are really done without thought, with strong bureaucracy, as compliance with standards, rather than deep thinking behind it. One of his quotes from the session yesterday is, "Rigor does not reside in methods. Methods are measures and tools. Rigor resides in thinking." One of the things that he also brought us to reflect on is that practitioners are the facilitators of decision making, and we all have a responsibility for effectively utilizing evaluation. Our colleagues from the UN office had a session, and they presented the compendium on best practices, a compendium that contributes to more impactful programming in the PCVE field. That's all on my side. I will pass on to my colleague who will present the agenda for today.
Thank you so much, Nourina. And I'd like to join Nourina in welcoming everyone to the second day of the Indeed International Policy and Practitioners Forum, looking together at advancing evidence-based practice and evaluation in the PVE, CVE, de-radicalization, and crime prevention fields. Before going on to look at the agenda and the program we have ahead of us today, I'd like to add to some of the points that Nourina raised, while at the same time inviting everyone to use the chat space that we have available on the AirMeet platform. Just to the right, I think on most browsers of where you'll see the speakers, you should see buttons for chat, questions and answers, and also for the other participants that are with us in the forum, joining from across Europe and around the world. And I'd like to invite everyone to use that chat session and chat space to be able to bring forward what for you were the highlights from the first day. Some of the ones that I would also flag to complement what Nourina has already shared with us were the encouragement in many different sessions to really look at the importance of bringing people together, bringing actors, bringing sectors together. We had the session with EFOS, the European Forum on Urban Security, learning from some of the local city level approaches, but also in many other sessions, the need to bring people together from different sectors: law enforcement, civil society, education, psychologists, community-based organizations. There's knowledge, expertise, and experience within all of these different sectors, and it can help us both to understand the situation and the needs which we're trying to engage with, the goals and objectives of what we're trying to achieve, but also when we're speaking about evaluation, to bring in different lenses, different experiences, and be able to harvest richer learning and understanding together. We also spoke in some of the sessions about, when doing that harvesting of learning, the value of going beyond just the traditional approaches of evaluation reports and actually looking more professionally, more competently, more rigorously at what are the ways we engage with and understand learnings. In some sessions, speakers mentioned the value of using workshops where you bring together practitioners and the communities impacted and also policymakers to talk through the reflections and the evidence that's being harvested from evaluations to really make sense of it and to engage with what Michael Quinn Patton was encouraging us to in the special talk in the evening, to develop our capacity to interpret. Expert evaluators, as we often call them, are people coming from a single sector or a single identity, class, educational background, may not always have the full breadth of experience or the different lenses that can be important to help interpret and make sense of and understand what we can harvest from experience and practice. we were encouraged quite powerfully, I felt, in the opening session and as we continued through the day, to be courageous, to really be willing to look at what's working, what isn't working, and to do that also about evaluation, to recognize that a lot of the methods and approaches we've had in evaluation developed in certain very early periods of the field, but we're now in a period where we can really learn from that and innovate forward and look at what is the evidence that we need. What do we understand by evidence? How do we gain and gather evidence, expertise, and experience to help us learn from what we're doing? And this key idea that evaluation isn't just about checking a box to say, did a project or program have impact or not? But what was the impact? Why? How? What worked on in it? And this encouragement, especially again from Michael in the evening session, to really do away with the bad practice idea of best practice and instead recognize that what we need to understand is what is the right practice that fits for the specific situations and contexts we're engaging in, and for the particular objectives or the work that we are doing and what we're trying to contribute to. So it needs to be situation and context based, engage with the realities of those contexts we're working in, and that where evaluation can perhaps help to play a really significant role is in helping us to understand directions, ways of work, how to do that work better. And again, get beyond that banality of evaluation or the checkbox approach. And as Narina mentioned, many speakers spoke to the importance of building our capacity. The reality today is that less than 10% of projects and initiatives in the field are actually evaluated. We heard that often you might have organizations, for example, non-governmental organizations and civil society, who would like to have evaluation done. But these are practitioners who are already sometimes doing the work of 12 with very limited budgets. And sometimes evaluation can feel like something that's coming on from on top, from donor requirements or something that's supposed to be done at the end of the project. And it can be important to look at how do we build our understanding and our capabilities for engaging with evaluation and what Michael called evaluative thinking. And that includes both, as many participants and speakers yesterday spoke to, building individual capacity and individual level training. And we have heard initiatives from the EU Crime Prevention Network, as well as the United Nations, and indeed as a project itself, where we are bringing out training manuals and training materials for the field to help us improve our capacities for designing evidence-based evaluation, but also to design projects, programs, strategies, policies, and initiatives with evidence. So that level of individual training. And it was noted that in many countries today in Europe and internationally, training on evaluation is not part of what people working in PVE, CVE, de-radicalization, and crime prevention actually receive in their training. We have a special session number 9 today in the second series, the first one today, but the second series in the forum overall of sessions beginning at 2 p.m. Central European time, which will focus on this issue of training and capacity building. But beyond individual training, we also heard from Sidonie Roberts yesterday about the need to build institutional and organizational capacity and individual evaluation being done on our own work in our organizations and how we build that up. We also have a special session today focusing on national and regional platforms, where yesterday we looked at urban and city platforms and the role those can play. Today we're going to be looking at national and regional platforms and how these can help us to build communities of practice, spaces, and also the practical capabilities to facilitate learning, sharing, exchange across and between different sectors, and the importance of building a culture of evaluation. This topic also came up when looking at policymakers in the session on evaluation of national strategies and policies, that we need to also build the understanding of the importance of evaluation with policymakers themselves and the importance of engaging with the evidence, experience, and expertise, the learning in the field to inform policies. A topic that came up a number of times was inclusion. And when we're speaking about inclusion across many different angles, gender, social, cultural, identity-based, different regions, different classes, how do we make sure that our evaluation processes are actually inclusive? Also looking at issues of who takes part in evaluation, who decides what to evaluate and what we're trying to understand through evaluation, but also who does the evaluation and who do we share the evaluation with. It was noted that in our current practice of evaluation, we very often have evaluators coming from the area that we understand as experts and knowledge. So those coming from universities or professional private consultants, whereas a lot of the field internationally has recognized that that's actually sometimes a bad practice in the field. There can be a strength with what should be the rigor and should be the good quality approaches that experts in evaluation bring, but very often these evaluators may not have background or understanding in the field, and they might not know how to harvest and bring forward and facilitate evaluation processes and bring forward findings and results of evaluation in ways that can actually be used and connect with the needs of policymakers and practitioners. So we've seen some great advancements in other fields of evaluation, not from PVE, CVE, but from other countries and other areas where they will often include mixed teams in evaluation, where they're moving away from just summative and final evaluations, which can be very important, but also looking at formative evaluations, developmental evaluation, building evaluation processes into the very implementation of the programs and the work that we're doing, and much more. Huge spaces for innovation. But really this idea of focusing on ownership, authentic inclusion, and we'll have a special session dedicated to that today. Much more was discussed, but in the spirit and the nature of the forum, what we would like to do is actually both to dive into today's sessions, but also to really invite everyone who's here joining us to continue to share in the chat here and bring forward what were your experiences and what were the highlights from the first day for you. I'd like to thank everyone who has already been contributing and taking part in writing down your experiences. And again, please do feel free to do that. Share with us what are the key ideas, recommendations, learnings that you take from day one. As Narina asked, I'm also going to introduce us to the day 2 program that we have today. We will begin shortly at 1 Central European time with a very special session where colleagues from the Indeed project who have been working incredibly through the last 2 years to really look at the state of the field of evidence-based evaluation and to bring forward what in the Indeed project we're calling the evidence-based evaluation model, they will share with us a package of some of the tools, including e-guidebooks, the evidence-based evaluation model, the evidence-based evaluation tool, and more. So in that session, which we'll be going to shortly, that's a whole of forum session, which we invite everyone to take part in. And we have the opportunity to hear from some wonderful experts and colleagues in the field, Dr. Lina Malki, Dr. Ina van der Vet, and Minna Prokic, who were colleagues working together on this, together with also Stefan Kloss, our lead researcher on evidence-based evaluation within the project. After the whole of forum session, we're going to go into our first group of parallel sessions for day 2. In the parallel sessions, we have 4 that we invite you to choose from and to look at the one that is of most relevance and most interest for your work. Session 6 is on designing evidence-based practice. And we have some wonderful speakers and experts who will join us to look at how to use evidence to design PCVE de-radicalization and crime prevention interventions. So how do we use evidence when we're designing the work that we're doing in our interventions, projects, initiatives, ad hoc engagements? How do we work with evidence to better inform us in what we do and what's the type of evidence we need? Session 7 is on dealing with issues of inclusion, voice, cultural competency, and gender, social, and ethical issues in evaluation in the PCVE, DRAD, and crime prevention fields. And here we're going to look at what does it mean to be addressing issues of gender in evaluation, what are ethical issues we have to consider, social implications, and the idea of cultural competency is the ability to understand the different cultural contexts, needs, issues that are important, and earning trust in engaging to do evaluation, and much, much more. We're going to be looking at how important these issues are to really make sure that the evaluations we do are done well. In session 8, we have a wonderful opportunity for a deep dive with two fantastic colleagues from Connect Futures, who will share with us an actual evaluation that they have been involved in and that they have done, where they're looking at an evidence-based evaluation with challenges and opportunities working with young people with high complex needs. So a lot of the work in the PVE, CVE, and de-radicalization fields and crime prevention fields are often looking at how do we engage with youth at risk of radicalization, youth to improve vulnerability and resilience. How do we engage with youth? And we're going to hear from two practitioners and researchers with deep experience and look at the reality of the complex needs and realities that youth are facing. And in the work we're doing, how can we engage with youth in those contexts? We then have the dedicated session looking at training and building national capacities for evaluation and evidence-based policy making and practice. So those are the 4 sessions we're going to start off with after that initial introduction of the Indeed evaluation package. Then we're going to have a break where we invite everyone to stretch legs, get fresh air, step away from the computer for a moment for those who wish. But also we do have a room which facilitates networking. So if there's someone that you want to speak with, you can even click on their icon ahead of time, write to people who are taking part in the forum, or set up a meeting with one of the speakers if you would like to. Use the opportunity of that break to have a networking connection and to speak with colleagues joining us together in the program. In the final parallel sessions, we have quite an incredible cohort of experts that work on exit programs. So this is really going to be a very interesting session, learning from some deep research that has been done on exit programs and also from deep experience of people working right at the front of the field there. Session 11 is on designing evidence-based policy. And this is really a key issue for many practitioners and people working in the field. In a consultation process supported by the European Commission in 2017, there were focus groups in 17 member states of the EU engaging with frontline practitioners from social workers, youth workers, educators, community-based and civil society organizations, law enforcement agencies, and others, and looking at what instruments and what practices did they have within their countries for supporting multi-sectoral collaboration, evaluation and learning from experience, and engaging with shaping policy. And the feedback at that point from across the European Union was a very clear and pronounced sentiment from many practitioner agencies that the expertise, the experience, that what has been learned from practitioners is often not engaged with when policy and legislation is being developed. Now, in some countries, we have different experiences. There's some countries which are much more robust in engaging with practitioners, but there's still many where there's a gap between the actual what is done by those implementing and the processes for developing the policies and the strategies. So here in session 11, we're going to look at designing evidence-based policy and how to use evidence to design local and national strategies. The last session that we have in that group in the afternoon is on the role of regional and national networks and platforms as tools for learning and improving practice. And we're going to hear from a very interesting and almost unique example, the Preval initiative and multi-stakeholder platform in Germany, which brings together different organizations, different actors to help foster and facilitate learning and exchange. And we have the good fortune to have 2 colleagues from Preval who will be with us there, as well as a presentation from the European Union Crime Prevention Network on the experiences and work of EUCPN in this field. So some great sessions. And what we would like to do is also to invite everyone taking part in the forum. Please do also, while you're here, post about the forum, share it out through your networks, invite colleagues to join us and take part. All of the sessions that we have through yesterday and today are being recorded. We will make them available and share them as recordings with all participants, and you also have access to them on the AirMeet platform. You can click in sessions once they've been completed and watch the sessions that have happened, but you'll also have access to them very soon on the Indeed project platform. But at the same time, it is a wonderful opportunity to take part live in these sessions. So as you're with us here, please do also share it to colleagues in your organization, share it through your networks on social media and more broadly to help invite others to join us and benefit from the opportunity of participating together today. So that is our highlights from day one of the forum, are setting the scene and overviewing together the agenda for day two. And what I would like to do now is to invite everyone to click on the schedule, leave this session, and join us in the Introducing the Indeed Evaluation Package, the first special session on day two of the Indeed International Policy and Practitioners Forum. Thank you once again to everyone for joining us, and we look forward to what we will experience and share together in the forum today.